Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
Right, let's come back to Europe. We're now being told, I think in the Sunday Times, perhaps in some other papers this morning, that the Prime Minister is going to not just get what he wants, he's going to pull some rabbits out of the hat. He's going to get more than we expect.
Well, he spent all of 2015 playing down expectations. And I remember Number 10 almost enjoying it in November and December when the Conservative-leaning press was really talking down the renegotiation that Cameron would achieve. They wanted to go into February with Tory backbenchers, Tory voters in the country, and Tory members, expecting really quite a paltry deal from Brussels and Berlin. So the rabbits that he pulls out of his hat don't have to be big rabbits. They can be medium-sized rabbits, and they think,
medium-sized,
and still clear the very low hurdle that has been set for him.
But he's raised the bar a little bit by talking of rabbits, hasn't he?
Well, I think this so far has gone exactly as I and many other people predicted it would. Cameron was always going to orchestrate it so that it sounded like it was always going to be very, very difficult, and then he managed to get a few concessions, and then, hey presto, he gets something fantastic at the last crucial moment. I do think, though, that the Leave campaign, the Out campaigns, the various Out campaigns, have a big challenge on their hands not to allow British voters to fall for these ruses, and that there should be real scrutiny of what Cameron comes back with. Well, and that has been an ongoing problem for a long time, and Eurosceptics who are not involved actively in those campaigns wish that they could come together in a much better way.
But if you're the Prime Minister on the whole European project, which I suspect privately wishes he'd never kicked off in the first place, it is so far so good, isn't it? He looks like he's going to get a deal next month at the summit, and the potential major deserters from, look, we're told Michael Gove is going to stay, Nick Herbert forms a Eurosceptic group to stay inside. We see no sign of Boris Johnson moving to lead the outers, no sign of Theresa May leading the outers. If Gove, May and Johnson don't do it, that's job done for the Prime Minister.
Yes, I mean, it's dangerous to make predictions, but the stars do seem to be coming together in a favourable way. I picked up the first whiff of this rabbit out of the hat on Thursday last week, which is essentially the Prime Minister would get something on welfare that would be better than his 4-year ban on in-work benefits. It would be this emergency break. You could say, look, the pressure on our public services are too great, and therefore we need to limit migration. And what is interesting about that is that potentially means that his 4 goals that he wants, he could do better than that. And what is interesting is that it now appears, according to an opinion poll in the Times last week, that voters have clocked onto these negotiations and believe that they're for real, and believe that if the Prime Minister does get a good package, then there's a greater chance that they will vote to stay in. Now, you had all the diplomats who years ago said, oh, the Prime Minister can't possibly do this, he won't get this, he'll have to have the agreement of everyone. Well, he appears potentially to have proved them wrong.
But even if it's all going swimmingly for the Prime Minister, there are 2 polls in the papers this morning, big polls, both showing a majority to come out. And that's a tight majority, excludes the undecideds, but it shows a majority to come out.
Well, Andrew, I've learnt my lesson from the general election, which is not to believe polls that I don't instinctively think are correct.
Well, they were right on the Scottish referendum.
So I don't think that those polls are actually...
You don't think they're right? You think
I don't.
The Leave campaign starting from behind?
I do think that, and I think that there is a danger, as Nigel Farage touched upon, that the voters will think that this is a giant stitch-up if the entire political establishment, all those big figures that we've just talked about, are all on one side. It doesn't then look like a balanced debate, and it may backfire.
Just want to look ahead to tomorrow. The markets, the equity markets, have had their worst start to a year since the crash. And all eyes will be on them when they open in London and in New York tomorrow. Is this government, should it be starting to prepare for a potential financial crisis that we're going to face?
Well, it's politically preparing, because George Osborne gave a speech, I think, about 10 days ago, which was much more negative about the economic picture than even the autumn statement as recently as November. And that, I think, is laying the political ground for, if not a recession or a crisis, then at least slower growth than we were expecting as recently as a few weeks ago.
All right. It looks worrying. I mean, the Dow at one stage was down almost 500 points.
Well, and clearly that would be very bad for Osborne going forward, although there is an argument that people will cling to Osborne as a future leader if times are tough.
Some people saw that speech by George Osborne as the beginning of Project Fear on the European referendum. Well, maybe he actually believed it, and maybe he was telling us that the warning lights are flashing, as the Prime Minister said a few months ago.
Well, we'll be keeping all eyes and see whether there's a flight to British bonds as well as there was to German and American Treasury bills.